you want to operate in. You know, it's interesting that Renske talked about mental health, but specifically mental health in the music industry. So that's a global niche in the sense that there's lots of creatives involved in music, some more successful than others, but it's a huge area in which there's such burnout. Because I suppose if you look at sort of the music industry, it doesn't really keep the same hours that we normally keep. You might be working late and then there's a party afterwards and blah, 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 different time. You know, there's lots of reasons why mental health will be a big issue there. But if she just looks at that globally, that's a huge marketplace, right? But to me, that's like, whoa, so niche, I would have nothing to do with that sort of space. But she could probably go even more niche about that. Like, you know, mental health for symphony players is probably less than mental health for rap singers. You know, maybe there's different contextual environments they operate in. So, you know, we need to decide on the basis of that niche, who do we want to serve, who can we serve best, and who can pay us the most for what we do. Because as soon as you realize that, you then realize, well, actually, from now on, really, certainly for the next year, because I don't see events coming back anytime before October, November, December next year. I have a global digital marketplace, so I have to be crystal clear about who I want to present to and how. Okay? And then the second thing that you need to do is you need to source and you need to actively engage, if you don't have one already, a social media partner or consultant or a company who genuinely knows what they're doing, because there's a lot of them who don't, who's in a position to ensure that you own that piece of cyberspace that is the part that you're focusing on your business. So the most important thing is understand the enormity of the market we're now in, how easy it is for us to get access to it, but the importance of niching your message in a way that's compelling to that particular part that you're going to, because then they'll pay for the value. That's the key. So who do I want to serve? Can they pay me? And how do I reach them in the digital world? And that's all helped by defining a niche.
So what I hear from you is that you say, okay, put formats aside for the moment. So maybe speaking, maybe coaching, maybe singing to your clients. And so the format of being in contact, in rapport with your clients is, in this particular moment, secondary, but you start working the niche first.
And the key thing about the niche is, before you address the niche, when you decide on what the niche is, you have to define what's called your UPP. So UPP are the universal pain points that those niches have.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So there's only really 4 ways in which we can sell our services, right? We can help our niche save time, save money. We can identify and represent that we understand their problems and we can solve them. Or more powerfully than all, we can make them feel good. So in the sense of, Renske, again, mental well-being, you can make me feel good, I'll pay any money for that, right? So they're the 4 elements of value. So define the niche, define the 4 elements of value. More importantly, by the way, when you put your message out there, a common mistake that a lot of people do is we talk about what we do, okay? Now, because we're in a digital world, there's an extremely huge level of distraction, more than ever. Oh, I've got a phone call, sorry. Oh, here's another email. I've got loads of reasons to be distracted. So unless you can actually define what they get out of working with us, in other words, you put the message in their language related to their pain as emotionally compelling as possible. Logic doesn't sell to people anymore. Emotion sells to them. So solve my problems, make me feel good. And you need to interpret our messages in a way that's compelling to them. Otherwise, you won't get their attention. And the basic reality is, in the modern market, is share of attention equals share of wallet or budget or whatever you want to say, you know?
Okay, let's assume you have done that. Let's assume you found the universal pain points. You know how to heal that, or how to make it better, how to make them feel better, or whatever the decision, the result is you come to. And then you kind of tackle these markets and address it, but that does not automatically mean that all of a sudden the world says, oh, welcome, Jan. This is what we waited for you. That's my next question to you. Where's the pressure you put on something that digital plays? Is it purely, would you say like, okay, invest all your money in marketing, or invest all your money in SEO, or where do you put time, energy, and time and energy that equals money in a certain moment?
Well, I think the reality, I mean, you know, it comes back to what you said earlier, Katja, about, you know, let's lose the form of what we do. We're speakers. Well, actually, we're not. We're content creators. We're messengers. So whether you write a book, you do a podcast, you shoot YouTube videos, you speak on a stage, you facilitate a live event, you do individual coaching, which actually is 80% of my revenue, right? Because my area of primary expertise is as an executive coach and training coaches to set up successful practices. So you need to sort of look, you lose the form, but the next thing you need to do is, after you define the niche, you have got to gain attention. And the only way to gain attention is to create what we call digital credibility banks. Now, many of us as speakers will have a lot of this stuff. So that will be articles, blog posts, YouTube videos, podcasts, etc. But it means that when I see your name, let's take something very simple like LinkedIn, for example. Okay, you've got to own your piece of digital cyberspace on LinkedIn. So you've got to clearly have a proper photograph, not the one of you doing tequila shots in Megaloof or whatever you fancy yourself, right? You've got to use the cyberspace you have there. You've got to have the right call to arms or call to action. You're going to have the right stuff in your bio. And the reason LinkedIn is so critically important for us today as speakers and content creators is that the first place I will go when I hear that you want to have a meeting with me is I will look at your LinkedIn profile. So if I look at your LinkedIn profile and I don't have some standard stuff like a good photograph, or maybe no photograph at all, believe it or not, people are still in that space, I'm going to make decisions about you already before I ever meet you, okay? So we need to show that window on the world, which is the single largest business network in the world, we own it, and we really own it. And inside there is where we put our credibility bank. They see posts, they see articles, they see videos, they see links, whatever, all of which, by the way, can be hosted back on your website, but needs to be put on LinkedIn as well. If you don't have a credibility bank, your books, for example, all the stuff we talked about before, you'd know about as speakers, if they don't see and have those things, the challenge that you have is that it's much harder to build trust online unless you already have the foundation. So you decide your niche, decide the value you want to bring, get your credibility in place, and then if you have an investment, to your point earlier, you need to now look at your website, which is your retail space. The problem with a lot of websites, and I put my hand up, my existing website is, and pardon the expression, I'll use an Irish term, shite, right? It's purely a brochure site. That doesn't work in today's world anymore. So I have a team of people I've now engaged who are redesigning my books, redesigning the covers, redesigning the format. I'm going to have 2 books launched in the next couple of months with new covers, new things, everything. I have a lady who's going to make sure that she professionally places them on all the relevant boards and distribution, Amazon, and stuff I haven't heard of, because that's going to put my name out there. And at the same time, I brought in a social media company to work with a colleague of mine who's rebuilding my website, now on a site called Kajabi, which will be far more interactive. So it'll be much more interactive. It'll ask for your information. It'll ask for email. It'll look up to set up appointments. It'll become a real shop space to really encourage people to engage with me and get involved with me. If you don't have that with your website, you're going to lose to those who do. Because the reality is that whether we like it or not, even when COVID's gone and we're back in the field, your ownership of that cyberspace, your ability to manipulate that cyberspace will determine your success in the market to come. Because the market's no longer local, it is entirely global. And that's good news.
Mm. One of my experiences over the last month has been, but that is my personal one, and I want to see how that is reflected how this is reflected in your experience, and how is it mirrored in what you've seen so far, and maybe it's interesting for the others. the more narrow my message was, the broader my audience was. Especially in a time where people were surrounded by noises all over the place, by Zooms all over the place, by whatever all over the place. I don't know. I don't attend any virtual cocktail anymore, right? Because why would I do that? Why? This is we are so tired of that. So the noise is so big. In my experience, this is the one thing let me put it like this, I kept, and I was kind of condensing even more before I did all this. Okay, put myself out in a different way and redefine these pain points you were talking about. But my question goes in this direction: what do you keep? What do you strengthen inside? So now we are in different forms of lockdowns, whatever, full and half and intelligent and wave breaker. I don't know what kind of lockdowns we have. It's a nice term. Any in between. What do you keep?
You mean, what do you keep in your practice in terms of what you want to give out to people in your speaking?
Yeah, or where do you, before you put yourself out in a new way to the world, what do you from what you have? So where do you look?
Yeah.
In particular, inside.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. You know, the metaphor that we have at the moment is we've died a death and we're about to be reborn. And if you're not prepared to accept that we're about to be reborn in a new world, in a new marketplace, you need to look at what's going on around you, you know? So what does that mean? It means that you can challenge everything about what you've done up until now. Everything. Nothing needs to stay the same. So what do I mean by that? I mean that you can set new parameters by which you rebuild your business. So I look at my business, for example, and I'm not going to do training programs anymore because I'm not a fan of training programs. Okay, I'll do a coaching group, but I'm not, because I love coaching. Or I will continue speaking because I love speaking. But I'll just do coaching and I'll do speaking, but I won't do any workshops anymore because I don't want to. And the beauty is I don't have to, because the market's so big that just with what I do, that's enough. And so I get to choose to do what I love to do and work with the people that I enjoy working with the most. So one of the things you asked, what do you keep? Keep what you love first.
Okay.
You know, there was a lot of reasons for us to do lots of different things because we needed to bring a couple of euros in order to keep us going. But what I'm saying is this is a chance, this COVID period, for reflection and rebirth for us in terms of our businesses to do what it is we most love, but to do it on a much wider scale than we've ever done before. So that's what you keep. You keep what you love. You keep what you enjoy. And the other reason you keep what you love and you keep what you enjoy is that's what you will do or deliver the best at. That's what you'll get most fees for.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because one of the things when I train sales teams, for example, or professionals in practice who need to learn how to do business development, the first thing I say is this word enthusiasm is so powerful. If you don't feel that what you do, you don't love it, you don't feel the value in it, you don't see how wonderful this is, you won't build the power of what we call congruence, so you can be convincing in your messages. So do what you love, and if you do, you'll convince everybody that you're the right person to work with.
Could we do a short round, because I'm interested, and of course I start with you, Renske, again. Let's resonate what Sean just said. What would that mean for you? Where would you start? Either at the inside, loving what you do more, and what is it in particular, and where would you start to the outside world and your niche? And then we do the little round here.
Actually, everything that he says resonates deeply inside of me, because this is exactly what I'm preaching to my colleagues, to my fellow artists, who are lost now. You know, they cannot perform, they're all lost, out of income. And I just, like last weekend, I was asked to do a talk for a huge digital platform in the electronic music industry. And I used stories also that I got from speaking with my befriend, some artists that I'm friends with. which were quite vulnerable stories, but they were like top DJs that would never come out with that story by themselves, but now they're using me as their tool. And it's all about this. It's all about purpose. You know, they have been struggling. Is this what I need to be doing in my life? What have I been doing all these years? Like a new, fresh look. For those two people that I'm talking about right now, music is what they need to be doing, and they are developing new ways. But they had to ask themselves that question, right? Like, is this what I need to be doing? So they regain new energy, new enthusiasm to do what they do. For me, I feel, even though it was quite harsh, my career was going to be like, after my burnout, this summer would like be kind of exploding. But everything is gone now. But for me, it's exactly that fresh outlook. It is like, what am I supposed to be doing? I was already also the presenter and interviewer in that industry. And this mental health thing was already something that I was doing. But now, even more, I really feel this is my purpose when I see everybody struggling and I'm breaking boundaries here. So everything resonates so deeply. And for me, that would be doing what I'm doing. There's hardly any income yet, because this is interesting maybe for Sean to talk about it later. Everything now they expect me to do for free or for a little bit of money. You know, webinars, talks, hosting, everything online is hardly paid. But if you ask me what I would, so my niche is there. I think I'm quite doing well in the process of what Sean just told us. For me, it's going to be creating content, which I love. I love speaking with my colleagues about this, raising awareness. So podcasting, keynotes, videos, but the coaching part, that to me is interesting, because this is something that I'm kind of already telling people, you know, like I want to be there for for the industry as well as a coach. But this is exactly why I'm here today. Like, how do I really get to that point that people are like, you know, yeah, I want her to coach me on mental health.
So what is the first step into that direction, Jean? You just open up your own school of coaching as a part of the pandemic. So in the sense of, okay, this is what I do. What would you recommend Renske at this particular moment?
Well, yeah, actually, I've been involved in coaching for nearly 23 years now, so I've been at it a long time. A lot of experience in that space. So I've got a couple of books published in that space. Is the question how Renske would move to being a coach, or is it about how she should offer her coaching? What was the question specifically?
No, you can repeat it, but Renske, but in my view, it was more, okay, I see that there is a need for that. How do I set the first steps to be in my niche, recognized as a coach? Am I right?
Okay. Well, I think we go back to what we were saying earlier about being very clear about what the niche is, and I think you're clear about that, Renske. So be clear about what you're messing. What's the value add they get from working with you? Why would they work with you in that industry or on that issue as opposed to working with me? Mm-hmm. So it's about, you know, we're back to this credibility bank. How credible are you as a person to facilitate somebody else in their journey to where you want them to go? So that's the key. So your background is really important.
Yeah.
And then the next thing is, you know, a lot of people confuse coaching with counseling. You know, there's a lot of conversational based coaches who stray across that line into therapy and into counseling when they're not qualified to do that work. I'm qualified as a psychotherapist, but I would never go into that space if I come across that in a coaching environment. Mm-hmm. Okay. So you need to be crystal clear about the difference between the two. So particularly when you're dealing with things like burnout, for example, because that's a mental issue, between what a counselor's job is, which is looking at root causes that have occurred in the past that are affecting current behaviors, and where are you now and where do you want to go for the future, which is more of a coaching engagement. Does that make sense? So you need to be crystal clear about what coaching is, what the boundaries are, and when it's not appropriate for you to get involved. In other words, it needs to go to a professional, I don't know, psychiatrist or whatever the issue might be. Exactly. But having a methodology so you can show the measured outcomes is a really important part of being successful in that field as well. So that's something you might want to think about. In terms of marketing it, the easiest way to market coaching, when you're clear about who it is you want to talk to, is always offer a complimentary coaching session. Come and speak to me. And that's the easy thing to do online because they expect it for nothing, right?
Yeah.
Oh, hey, here's something for nothing, right? Do 50 minutes with me. Yeah. I'll talk to you about what coaching is. I'll talk to you about confidentiality. I'll share some models with you that I use. I'll share some experiences some clients have. And then we'll do an exercise which will help you maybe identify what we might do together. Mm-hmm. Now, if you do something like that, you've already positioned your value. Mm-hmm. Okay, so there's different ways to market different things. So coaching should always be delivered, but you need to make a small investment initially. And the reason is that you might decide, well, actually, this isn't somebody I want to work with.
Yeah.
And they get a chance to get to know you as well. So in a coaching situation, a preliminary meeting is important. And from that perspective, it's not that different from if you want to offer a speaking gig, or we want to, we'll always do that pre-consultation. How will you know it's been a fantastic event for you? How will you know it's been a fantastic? What are the key things we need to hit? So it's really about, it's pre-selling value is what you want to think about. Is there an opportunity to pre-sell value about whatever it is I'm offering by getting to build rapport? There's that question you were looking for earlier, or trust with people before we actually do the gig. So you have to invest a little bit of time, and that's probably more than ever before because it's all about building this relationship in this two-dimensional environment now. But something else that she said, I just want to raise, for the first 6 months of when COVID hit in March, business just disappeared. I'm sure many of you will share that experience. I had the same thing. My clients all shut down because they didn't know what they were doing. They didn't know what to do. They hadn't a clue. And they've only scrambled away to finding a way to which they're doing things now. I'm talking about big corporates. I'm talking about companies I work with like Microsoft and Indeed.com. I mean, big organizations had to find a way to make sense of this new world. But now they have. And I think the previous perspective of, if we get it on Zoom, then it's only worth a little bit, is not there anymore. As they appreciate, this is our world. We need to invest in our people, and they'll pay the rates. You just got to ask.
Thank you.
I'm curious, Jan, and maybe in doing that we can open up a couple of new doors and close a couple of ones. How does what you just experienced with redesigning your website and going deeper into your message, how does that resonate with what Sean just said? And maybe there is aspects of what Sean experienced that the two of you could debate or discuss. I'm just curious about your opinion.
Well, what you said sort of 15 minutes ago, that you have to find your niche, you have to find your story. Otherwise, if you tell someone else's story or a story that's too generic, you don't stand out. And that's exactly what I did. I have a background as a creative director and a designer, and I specialized in personas and personas and customer centricity. So there you go, personas, customer centricity. So what are you about? And I'm about human interaction. Why do people do what they do? And what's the core of this? And working with Chris Baldwin got me a layer deeper. And now I'm totally specialized on trust. Why do people trust you? And why do you trust people? And it's such a fascinating topic. And it's my topic. It's what I really believe, because I used the sentence for years. And the sentence is, we say what we think, but we do what we feel. Mm-hmm. Again, we say what we think, but we do what we feel. And that's what I used to explain behaviors. I used it to explain personas and customer centricity or customer experience. But if you prolong that sentence and you say what people say and what people do, and the distance between it is exactly what trust is about. So I got to a logical point in my development, my mental development, and development of what I want to help people with. So now I have a new topic, and I have to well, what I said earlier, get everything together, get my digital credibility bank in order, and get myself out there with a new story. But it's not a new story. It's an adapted story. It's not that I borrowed the book from someone and said, "Hey, this is an interesting. Now I'm going to talk about something totally different." No, it's a very logical conclusion, a journey for me.
Yeah.
And now I'm ready for the next step to actually help people with understanding how trust works.
Yeah, it's an evolution of your message.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
I do have a question that probably touch bases on a topic that is for somebody who's coming from an English speaking background, like native English speaking background, and that might be a little bit different from people who are not. So speaking about this global thing, you were talking about, how does, in your perspective, how is it different? I mean, Sean Weafer, everybody knows, okay, has English as a mother tongue. There was no doubt about that. So when you are, I don't know, Russian, Polish, Dutch, Portuguese, Brazilian, yeah,
French,
whatever, that might be different. So how do you tackle globality online, but in the online reality, when you're not coming from a natural English speaking country, or when your mother tongue is different, right? We had a very interesting discussion at the last GSF board, where we have a new board member from Sweden, and this board member was very, very direct in saying, like, look, what Americans talk about, the content they give is mostly bollocks, but the presentation is brilliant. When Europeans talk, content is great, deliverable is so-so, or sometimes good. So there was this huge advantage that English-speaking people seem to have in the world. Is that so, or what do you recommend?
As you're talking, what comes to mind is that, you talked about the presentation that the Americans have. I mean, it may simply just be confidence because their first natural language is English. And if they're speaking to an English speaking or comprehension based audience, then they'll speak quite naturally because they're speaking in their own language. Naturally, if you speak French or Dutch or German or Swedish or any other, and that's your primary language, then there's going to be a degree of hesitancy or a lack of conviction if you're speaking to a natural English speaking audience. So that degree, a little bit, even though it might be very small, anxiety will impact on your confidence, and that impacts on your conviction or your ability to present your message as powerfully as otherwise you might. But I also think you need to understand that if you're speaking to an English-speaking audience and you're French, Dutch, German, i.e. your first language is not English, and you can speak to them fluently and comprehensively, it doesn't matter that you don't get everything right because they're in awe of the fact that you can speak it that well anyway. So you need to sort of give yourself a break here, and as long as you're suitably prepped for the presentation and the slides all run in the right order, or your speech runs in the right order, it's not really a problem. There's nothing to be concerned about. Just do what you always do, sell your message, show them the value, help them out.
That people that are in different markets, in one of the global markets, are drawn to you, even when they know that obviously you're not speaking, and English is not your mother tongue. How do you make them choose or see you equal in the same way as they would see someone from Ireland or from Scotland or England?
Well, the good news is the Irish are still European. So not the Scots or the English or the Welsh. So let's be clear about that, right? And actually, I speak Irish as well, not just English. so in terms of, are you talking about building the confidence in the fact that you're not an English speaker versus an English speaker talking on the same topic, or different areas or what?
No, let's assume you're on LinkedIn, and then there is someone in, I don't know, in whatever market in the US or in Latin America, and this person is looking for in virtual speaker or for a coach, and in the global market, like, right? And then you have, I don't know, five people on your Google search, or you have 5 people that are narrowed down, and you're one of these 5, and 3 of them are English natives. How do you overcome the disadvantage of not being a native speaker for somebody who is working in a, I don't know, in a different market?
Okay, well, I think first of all, it goes back to the fact that if you've built your credibility bank and they've seen videos or they've heard pot, they know you're not a native English speaker, but is the content still of value to me? So they've obviously gone through that process before they sit you and talk you, with 2 or 3 other native English speakers. So really, it's very simple. I mean, you just simply say to them, look, I'm conscious my English not my first language. Are you comfortable with the level of fluency that I have? Is that going to be a challenge for your audience or not? So just get it out there.
Yeah,
just
but
ask
then
the question.
Already a step further. But how do you do that if you're just putting yourself out online somewhere?
Oh, okay. Well, then that comes down to how fluently you are talking on your topic in English on your videos.
Okay, so here we are with the videos. So, Frohe, the videos you did on your topic, would you say that they would attract someone from, let's say, from Brazil in working with you on the PowerPoint intelligence? Or I'm very interested in globality. Does not only mean that we are.
I get it. I understand that. So maybe if I understand it better, let's look at my global strategy.
Yeah.
My global strategy is to focus on English-speaking countries around the world.
Yeah.
First. Okay. If I was a French person, I'd focus on French-speaking countries or the French-speaking part of Canada or whatever. Spanish is the same, right? And so you focus on the language that is most appropriate to where you are and how you do that first. Logical thing to do, right? And secondly, then, I would look at what are the markets where English is not the first language, but is fluently spoken. So in the Middle East, English is spoken fluently by the professional and business classes. Same in Germany and France and Italy and Sweden, and when you go to China, the first language of business has been English. So, if you do speak English at all in any form, it is a global marketplace at the present time. Mm. So I really, honestly, I'd look to where your strengths are first, but I really wouldn't be put off by the fact that you don't speak, because I'm going to tell you now, like 0.75% of the world doesn't speak English as its first language, but they speak English. Or sorry, 75% of the world doesn't speak English as its first language, but they speak English. That's your market as much as it's mine. Shouldn't be an issue.
No. Now, it's less about it, because Hans is mentioning this in the chat. It's less about the accent. The accent indeed is most of the times very well appreciated and nice. But very often it looks like that if there is a lineup for whatever activity, coaching, speaking, training, for a certain topic, let's assume the topic is trust, right? And there is an Irish guy, there is an American guy, then there is a Dutch guy, and then there's a French guy. That it seems when someone from Saudi Arabia is looking for that speaker, that they have the tendency to pick the people who are from the English-speaking countries without checking if the content is probably way better from the Dutch guy who speaks about trust in a way nobody else can in the world, because they are not even able to go that deep into the topic.
Yeah. I think, to be honest, you're dealing with an issue of perhaps unconscious bias there. There might be some perception that if it comes from America, that it's better than that, that the local market or somebody that, we're going into a whole other area of unconscious bias. We're going into areas that were maybe part of the colonization process for English-speaking countries. and there's that bias is still there. I speak as an Irishman on that because, you know, when I was a kid born in Ireland, we had been colonized by the English. So our view in my generation was, you know, British is good, Irish is bad. You know, our fundamental self-confidence had been taken away, our self-worth. So people right up into the 80s naturally looked or chose British consultants or American consultants, or would they choose people like me who were better than these guys? So there is an element of unconscious bias there that you have to work with. But I think what it comes down to is, you know, I said it earlier, can you demonstrate to me that you understand my problems and that you can solve them? If you put your message that way, as opposed to, say, an English-speaking English person, a British person, well, let me tell you how we're going to fix your problem, which is very direct and very in your face, which is great, but it's never as powerful as I understand what your problem is, this is how I understand it, and this is how we're going to resolve it. That's what I'm going to do for you. Because the problem that you still have with a lot of people who are pitching with a native English element is they tend to tell you what they're going to do for you, as opposed to, here's what's going to happen as a result of this. Mm-hmm. And that messaging process is changing, but it hasn't changed yet. Mm-hmm. So I would work is, where's my strengths? Where's my credibility? You know, I mean, if I'm choosing people and I've got a confident American or Irishman or whatever, but I've got a German who's got 3 PhDs, like Niels Brabant, who speaks perfect English, who am I going to choose? I'm going to choose Niels, right? End off. That's where the credibility is.
Okay. Talking a little bit more about the formats. The way you put your brain, the trust from Jan, the PowerPoint intelligence from Flora, and the brain stuff from Hans. You put that into different pockets on your website, on your LinkedIn, on all these things. Where would you, in your experience, where would you focusing on? Where would you be focusing on?
In what respect? In terms of everybody's business, my business?
No. In terms of, where do you look first when you value your own business? Not in particular to the PowerPoint intelligence. What are the parameters to look at when you do that? Not in, maybe you take yourself as an example, but that's not necessary. How do you decide if you're going to have online videos, if you're going to have movies or coaching?
Okay.
Okay.
Well, again, I just use the transformation I'm going through because that might help, right? I'm not there yet, so it's going to take a couple of months to get there. But the first thing that I did was I reduced right down the service offering that I make available to the world. Okay, so I do executive coaching. I train people to set up their own coaching practice, and I do speaking. That's it. Okay. I don't say I do workshops and I do training and I do this and I do that and I do the other. So in a world that is now increasingly digital, the secret is to minimize the level of choice, not maximize the level of choice. Okay. So what you don't want to do is say, I do 10 different things, whatever you need, I can do it for you. Okay. What you need to say is I do 3 different specific things, and this is what they do. This is what you'll get as a result of doing them. Okay. So first of all, that then targets what you do, right? Secondly, then that informs what it is you need to do. So for example, for the coaching school that's been launched, I've just relaunched the book I wrote 20 years ago. It's coming out called Cash. So CASH, Coaching as a Side Hustle. So the school is not designed for anybody. It's designed for people who want to set up a really successful coaching practice, but they can do it as an additional revenue stream, or they can do it as they're going to retire and they need financial security, or they're in a job and they want to expand their revenue and they want to do something interesting. So it's not designed for everybody. It's designed for people who want to do it as a side hustle. That's a very specific niche.
Yeah.
You get me? Yes. I do executive coaching. Now I work with a lot of corporate executives, but actually what I'm doing is I'm refocusing it again to where I'm going to work with partners in practice and accountancy firms and legal firms and architectural firms. Why? Well, because they're typically people who are expert at what they do, but they're not expert at influencing people. So typically in the area of business development, it's something they hate. But the more senior they become in their practice, the more of that they have to do because they have to feed the fishes. So that's a very clear niche. But then there's another reason why I'm doing that, in that I'm putting all of my coaching and all of my coaching training and work through an international CPD process. So that's a continuous professional development process. So it'll be certified as CPD. All of those professions need to do a minimum number of CPD hours in a year. If they can do that, being coached by me, where the hours they spend with me go towards that, plus I help them with their leadership and business development stuff, happy days.
Happy days, yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's about really fitting what you do and aligning what you do in very clear areas, but not giving them a broad range of stuff. Now, what do I do when I have that? Well, with coaching, I build a one-on-one relationship with senior executive people. If I have a good relationship and I'm delivering a value for them, then I might say to them, you know what, have you ever considered training your team in the business development tactics? And they go, oh, hadn't thought about that. Well, why don't we do that? Great. Now I've just sold a series of group coaching programs, but I don't actually have to have it on my website. So I'm not confusing people by choices. I've sold them on the basis of a personal relationship. That's all good selling. Selling is about being of service to people, right? I might have psychometric profiling, but I build a psychometric profile into a coaching engagement, and then they say, this is really good. Can I get this for my team? Yeah. Would you be interested in mapping the whole team? So you only offer some clear offerings initially, and you look at your offerings and you go, what do I enjoy? What would generate me the most revenue? What can I easily deploy? If it's speaking, fine. That's great. Stick it in there. But then you upsell or bring the other elements of your business in on the back of those existing relationships. You're not going to the market with everything, just with the things that compel people to engage with you. I call it the tip of the spear process.
Mm-hmm.
So basically the tip of the spear, which is the 2 or 3 services that you specialize in, that you build a name in, makes the ingress into the organization. And then once you build the initial relationships, you then flow in with whatever else you happen to have behind you. But minimize choice, because in a world of huge distraction, the less choice they have to make and the easier that choice is to make, then the more likely you're going to be successful.
How much?
Katja, mag ik een vraag stellen? Can I ask a question?
Of course.
Yeah? Okay. It was, you shared with us the idea of the pre-selling connection. And it was about, was it 15 or 50 minutes?
About 50. It can vary. It depends on what you're offering.
Okay.
But usually about 50 to 60 minutes is what you need, because, and it should be a structured meeting as well. So it's not just a general conversation. So the purpose of the meeting is for you to get to know them and for them to get to know that you're a credible individual.
Yes. My question is the next one. It's very trendy to call that kind of sessions a strategy session. And I was thinking, do you have a better word or a new word for it? That's my question.
Yeah, it's similar. A lot of coaches, for example, call their first meeting a discovery call. Clients hate the word discovery call, right? And I'm going to suggest you're not going to lay out strategy for somebody in an hour, all right? So I simply say a complimentary coaching session. That's it. It's a complimentary coaching session, okay? And in that session, we will do A, B, and C. But most importantly, you'll walk away from that hour with some ideas about what you have to plan or what you can do that will bring value. If you never talk to me again, you'll have that to take away with you. So it's deliver some form of value for them. So if it's a strategy, or was previously a strategy session, just say it's a complimentary, strategy. I'm not sure strategy is the word, but maybe a complementary management session, and out of which we'll identify some outcomes for you to work on going forward. That's it.
Thank you.
You're on
You
mute,
are
Katja.
unmuted. Unmuted.
I'm sorry, I muted myself.
Thought it got very quiet there for a second.
Yeah, Hans, how does that relate to the way you are kind of identified your way of doing business over the last year, and what do you take from that? I just try to get a conversation a little bit, to open up the conversation a little bit more. Sorry for you, Deborah, we are already an hour in, and I don't want to onboard you properly for the next 30 minutes, because there has been said already a lot of things. That's why I'm just want to open up the floor. Hans, any ideas? Or
well, it's a general question, of course. For me, I see the Corona crisis as a huge opportunity, because the people who know me, I have a background in video. So the international market, when the meetings become more and more hybrid or virtual, basically gives a more plain level playing field when you operate from the Netherlands.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
that's what I'm focusing on at the moment. And I think it was when we're talking about Renske, is your name? Yeah. The evolution process for me, in the end, the evolution process has come out to purpose and values. And I think when I have to choose one, values are even more my topic than purpose. And I must say that's one other thing. That's one of my how do you say that? Things I want to achieve. This is wisdom coming from David Newman. David Newman says you first have to decide what type of business are you building, and after that, then you have to decide what role speaking is going to play in your business. And for me, it was an eye-opener, because I have a very broad interest in many topics, but I had to choose as a speaker one topic. But in my business, the Brainfulness Institute, I have a broader range of topics I address. You understand what I'm looking at Katja now? You understand what I'm saying, Katja?
I do understand what I'm saying. I was just curious how all the stuff Sean said reflected. It is reflected in your business. It was more to open the floor than to interrogate anybody. Renske, how about you?
Yeah, I've been I don't have any good feedback right now, because there's a lot happening inside of my I'm looking at the same time when I hear you guys speak. At the same time, I'm making connections with, how am I doing this? How can I improve that for my, and I know I'm doing everything with no budget, because I'm out of income as myself because of the crisis. So I'm working with not a lot of a budget, and still trying to get it all, like, and the good thing is I understand it all, I get it all, and it's just like, how do I make this, how can I improve that, and how do I do that? So as you could tell, I was really in my own zone at the moment, so I don't have anything that I now, yeah.
That's
I'm just
fine.
taking it all in. I'm just making notes for myself and everything. So yeah.
Jan, how about you?
So, although I know a lot about trust, how would you recommend that I go forward from here? What would you look for in my digital credibility bank?
Is that a question for me?
Yes, Sean, yes.
Sure.
Okay, well, as it happens, about 6 years ago, I wrote a book called The High Trust Advisor anyway, so it's kind of my space also.
Yeah.
But just to say trust is not enough for me to buy something from you.
No.
Or engage your services. I think we all know it's valued, but you need to put it in a frame by which I can look at that and go, that's what it does for me. Right? So you could say, whether it's around leadership, for example, you could talk about how you build levels of trust that engage and motivate your employees at a distance, or in this new remote world, for example, right? Or how to maintain trust with clients in the new digital age.
Yes.
But they'll be real compelling, relevant issues right now.
Yeah.
So one of the things I'd look at is, okay, you talk about trust. Tell me how I build trust online. Tell me how I build trust like this. Tell me how I build trust in a 2D world. Tell me how I use WhatsApp or Slack or whatever to build trust, because that's the question, and those are the questions that are being asked.
Yes.
If you can come with those solutions, I want to talk to you.
And do you think it's I should focus
sorry,
on...
One other area to consider, Jan, as well, is one area that I speak about, is that increasingly artificial intelligence is replacing a lot of transactional elements in leadership and in business development. So you might want to talk about how trust future-proofs against AI, for example.
Exactly.
So people in the future who will be retained and will be of value to businesses will be the humans who can build empathy, who can build advice, who can stimulate, from Renske's perspective, creativity and innovation. The bots can't do that yet.
No.
So I would look at how would I position trust around that space.
So as I start my speech right now, I say trust is the most important ingredient in every relationship we have, whether between doctors and patients, or colleagues at work, or companies and customers. And then I get into my story. But do you think
could I suggest a change to your keynote, if I may? If I could be so bold, right?
Sure.
Don't tell me what it does. Ask me what it does.
So can you give an example?
Yeah. So imagine a world in which artificial intelligence replaces everything that you do. Now imagine a world in which people who can build trust and empathy and care and creativity are more valued than ever before. I'm going to show you how to become one of those people.
Okay.
So position a question of consequence, a question that engages them in fear, which is what happens when the bots take over the world, or a question of positive consequence, which opens up a scenario that they can become. Right? And then you say, I'm going to show you how to make that happen. So you offer them the promise at the beginning of the keynote. That way you snag their attention, and then you lead in from there.
Yes. And do you think I should focus it on those issues, or because
well, it depends on you. I mean, trust is an enormous area.
Yes.
So what I would do is what I said at the very start of our conversation today is define what are the areas that are most in need of trust right now, right? And I can tell you straight away, banks are most in need of trust, right? So go to your bankers and say, you want to learn how to build trust and maintain trust with your clients in the digital world? I'm your guy.
Cool. Yeah. So even really get on into one or two niches, and that's it.
Key, and like I said, I mean, that's a good point. It's not about, you don't have to just one niche. You could have 2 or 3 niches.
Yes.
Where the message is slightly different, but you're still doing the same content. So it's not that you just have to have just one and that's all you ever do. You could have 2 or 3 of those.
So if I understand properly everything you just said, it's about first minimize and then optimize and then maybe maximize. Okay, but it is not okay. Try to play every game. Try to build every channel. Right? It's first you need to market to yourself what is really dear to you. Now is a good time to do that. And afterwards, you decide, okay, and when I want to put that out globally, then there is a good idea to start there with the banks.
Yeah, and start with doing what you love.
Yeah,
not what you're already credible at.
Yes,
you know.
Deborah, I didn't want to fall into the short time you've been in this call, but I'm very interested in what you have heard up to now, and how does that resonate with you? And maybe you tell us one or two sentences about what your business does for your clients.
All right. Well, I first of all, I'm really gutted I missed the first hour, and that was just my own fault, not adjusting the time. But what I've heard so far, it's just absolute gold dust, particularly what you were saying there, Sean, to Jan about trust and opening the speech. I just loved it. And a lot of it's quite adjacent to how I want to position myself. So I've been sort of looking at the idea of real leadership in an unreal world, and the real being the value that, you know, the sort of the need people have for human connection in this virtual space, and for people to be vulnerable and to share their stories, to have self-revelation, just to be real and natural and human, and do away with the front and artifice and veneer that people have. So I mean, there's obviously some adjacent stuff around trust, and I really loved your idea of kind of starting with a fear-based question.
But it can be. I call this a question of consequence. So I can open a story with a positive question of consequence. So here's a world, would you love to be there? Or I can start with a negative question of consequence, which is a fear, which immediately grabs their attention. I'll give you an example of what I mean. I was working with and all speakers will relate to this, trust me, right? I was coaching a senior accountant in a firm, actually in London, actually. And I've been talking about speaking and presenting, and he came up to me at the break and he said, Sean, I have a speech to give this week. And I said, great. He said, it's on Friday afternoon. I said, not so great. Immediately after lunch, even worse. And I have to speak to 100 CFOs of the top FTSE 100 companies. Even worse, they're accountants. And then he said, and I've got to speak about human rights. I said, if you could choose the worst time to give the worst speech ever, that's it, right? But what we did was we had to think about it. And I said, right, let's do this. And so when he got up on Friday afternoon, immediately after lunch, when everybody had a nice dinner, they were sitting back to relax for an hour because this was irrelevant to what they did, he started with this question. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you've had a lovely lunch. May I ask you a question? The benefit of starting a keynote with a question is that it immediately grabs people's attention. Also, they have no critical faculty to defend themselves against it, so it drops directly into their head. And the question was this: what will happen to the share price of your businesses if tomorrow it's discovered in the Financial Times that your company uses child laborers? He said, everybody sat up straight away. Bing! Because he related his topic to their pain.
Yeah.
And that's how you use a question of consequence.
Yeah.
He said, I had them for the full 30 minutes on the basis of that one question. So that's what I call a question of consequence. And that's what I would teach a lot of keynoters to think about framing, to really engage their audiences from the start. Either that or a story that's so personal but has a meaning for the audience that you own. So in other words, it's something that's uniquely happened to you. But the problem with a lot of speakers is they tell stories which are all about them, but there's no relevance to the audience. That's just ego. There's no value in that. Okay? But your story, if it's a real story and it's yours, but it resonates, it has a universal message. Something around parenthood, for example, or something around whatever that they get. That's another powerful way to induce the audience into trance. So part of my training is as a clinical hypnotherapist, so I know how to use language in a way that starts to induce trance in people. Now you're starting to realize my secrets when I start talking to audiences.
Well, I'm a hypnotherapist as well.
Oh, there you go. Should be using some of it then.
I'm all signed up for it all, but I'm still struggling in a way with the positioning of it, because it's kind of a new concept, and I still want to, I'm still not sure what the real pain is. I understand what the value is of people having a human connection, but I don't think I've really been able to articulate what the negative impact is or the consequence is if people continue to be very starched and separate and, you know.
Well, you could talk about, you know, I mean, for me, the loss of real human contact. You know, all of us here, I'm sure, could tell stories about how we've missed, you know, the loss of human contact over the last 6, 7, 8 months. You know, we haven't been able to hug people. We haven't been able to call people up and go for coffee. We haven't been able to talk about, you know, relationships. So maybe the issue is that the pain is the loss of cohesion of business relationships, business productivity, and business profits, because there's a lack of real leadership and connection in an unreal world.
And maybe I can add something here. There is in this a particular area about this business cohesion, especially when you're trying to do new business. So if your business relations are already your business relations for a couple of years, that's easy. But if you have something that you wanna sell in a new industry, for instance, that at the moment is, I would say, nearly impossible.
It's
right?
a huge area.
Yeah,
Huge area.
and people haven't met you yet, and they say, why on earth would I trust you on Zoom? And then here we are back with Jan's story. How do you build trust on Zoom? That they maybe I can send them a product demo of something they usually would have seen, and I would bring it with my own hands to their office, and we could sit together and talk about this tiny little whatever it is. So, but how do you do that? That would be even more specific and more in this sphere. So yeah, of course.
Yeah, and while Jan's one might be to send in a demo to establish trust, I would have to find ways to demonstrate the the huge value of human connection.
Human connection.
And as you know, take your point, Sean, that it's not about telling ego-led stories about myself and how great I am, but something around revelation or breaking down barriers, or just something where people can resonate in their own space around connectivity. And I think I'm still teasing out kind of what this is all about, or how to communicate.
Just let it flow. I think Extine had a question.
Yeah, you have to unmute yourself, honey. Yeah. Thank you. Still.
Better. Sorry about that. Anthony Steers. Deborah, you probably know him, Sean, you as well. He talks about cold calling. But one of the things he talks about as well is a pizza menu and sort of pricing and everything else and breaking all that down as you can send it off to people. But on the back of it, he suggests you create a questionnaire that people can fill in and say, well, are you seeing this? Are you seeing this? Are you seeing this? So basically creating that recognition of the negative. And then saying, well, if you've answered more than 5 of these 10 questions with a yes, maybe you should call me to help you out. You know, or some sort of call to action that you add to that. But it just helps you to create that connection, trigger the fear, but at the same time also show the value that you will be bringing.
That's an excellent point. Yeah.
I'd like to, if possible, I'd like to hear Anna a little bit, because you tuned in later. Yeah, you tuned in later as well, and I just don't want to interrupt the flow with the people we had already. But how is it going so far for you?
Good evening, almost evening. We haven't seen each other for quite a while. It's let's say for me, business-wise, I'm picking things up again. I haven't done anything on keynoting or any workshops. So I work at a university right now, but I would like to pick up business speaking, but actually more workshops and masterminding. So I'm back and I'm learning again, seeing of things to fresh up, getting insights again. So to me, it's really getting into the flow of your own business. For now, I still have to complete the job. So where in July, my contract finishes and I don't want to extend it. And then from that time on, just really want to get my business back on track. So that I'm learning again. So I don't think that there's anything else I can add right now. So listening or what you have to say, and yeah, try, and I'll apply it certainly if, so not if, but where necessary.
There is the thing, Jean, you said that maybe in October 21, maybe nobody knows really when we are going to back to an analog speaking life, if at all. In my personal opinion, is we never go back to this. In my personal opinion, speaking is over. For a lot of people in the industry, that is now the time, especially in the event industry. Now is the time to get rid of all the expensive people who only do 10 minutes of inspiring stuff and do not change anything, neither in the business or in the organization they speak for. So how do you reinvent yourself as a speaker? And for me, this has to be my last question to you. You can keep talking as long as you like. We were scheduled until 5:30, and my next team call is on. But I just silently fade out while you are speaking. And Jan, if you could take over, that would be very lovely. So, how do you reinvent yourself as a speaker?
Well, I disagree. I don't think speaking is over. I think it's changed. I do agree with you that we're never going to go back to where everything is just live. I, for one, I'm only ever going to leave this office behind me when I'm going to Mauritius for my next gig, or San Diego, or somewhere interesting. Otherwise, you book me online. So I have options which are more cost effective, where they can get me as a hybrid speaker, or they can get me live. And the reason I think they're still going to want live people is because people want to network. You know, I've spoken to clients who've gone through online events over the last couple of weeks and months, and they said, yeah, I did a bit of business, but never as much as I would do if I were physically in the room with them, or we had a beer, or we had a bit of lunch, or whatever. So that's definitely going to come back. Whether they will pay the extortionate speaker fees for, the non-journeyman speaker like we are, the 40, 50, 100,000 kind of gig, I don't think that's going to happen, not unless you're an ex-president of the United States. But I do think for us, there'll still be a need for high content, highly engaging, who operate within a reasonable sort of margin, 3 to 10 grand, whatever situation, that they will bring us out. But we'll have to do more than just a keynote. We'll have to do breakouts. We'll have to do workshops. We'll have to add a lot more value. But I think there'll be options going forward. But I don't think speaking as we've known in the past is over and dead forever, though.
I'll pass the hosting stick to Jan, because I really need to leave you, and I'm going into a Teams meeting right now. And but please continue the conversation. Right, we had a rough start, but now it's now this is flowing. Hey, enjoy the rest of Sean.
Thank you, Katja.
Thank you very much, Katja.
I have a question. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
You were talking about that you can have different niches together. Is it possible to have a niche trust for bankers and trust for housekeepers? Is that possible?
Yeah, it is. I mean, the fundamental thing is your competency and credibility in the field of trust.
Yeah.
Right. So if I have 2 or 3 niches, like trust for salespeople, for example, how do we engender trust and have new people talk to us? Mm-hmm. Trust for bankers. How do we get people to believe, you're not blood-sucking vampires and, they really need to talk to you, sort of thing, right? Or you could have trust for teachers. Mm-hmm. So, or trust for managers. So, we don't work in a command and control world anymore. We're working in a world that is more about influence than ever was before. So how do you build trust with people to have them do what you want them to do, because you can't tell them what to do anymore? So there can be multiple niches within something like trust, but you obviously got to niche the value that the subject matter brings and how they do it differently from everybody else. That's what would define your approach to the niche. But yeah, I mean, something as big as niche could be bankers, housewives,
yeah.
whatever,
But I still would recommend no more than 3
Absolutely, no more than 3, because you don't want to reach a situation. And I would just choose, if I was choosing a niche, I would start with just the initial niche that I would enjoy working with the most, that will pay me the most amount of money for my time, and that ultimately will deliver the most amount of value for me. I often talk to my clients about martial arts. I did martial arts for many, many years. And the essence of martial arts is to use a minimum level of intervention required in order to get the maximum output from your opponent. So you do the minimum effort required to cause the maximum amount of pain and damage. Right? Probably a bad metaphor. But the point I'm using is that you need to use what you might consider the minimum amount of intervention on your end. So the things I enjoy the most, that pay me the most, with the most need, you know, so that it's effortless for you, but the return is unlimited initially. And I'd start with that niche, and then I'd build a different niche, you know. I mean, for example, one of the areas that, I mean, I focus on business. That's my thing. I help basically transform experts into influencers who can lead teams and win clients in the digital age. That's my job, right? So what falls into that? Networking, advanced questioning skills, working with different personalities, speaking and presenting, coaching, blah, blah, blah. It all fits into that area. But separate and independent of that, I have an underlying theme to that. And that theme is that the world is moving into a feminine-based world, that the masculine age is over. The feminine age is here. What does that mean? It means that, so I wrote a book called Invoking the Feminine, Strength, Love, and Wisdom, right? Which is all about feminine spirituality. Now, I know that sounds strange. How does a guy talk about feminine spirituality? But I am an Irishman, so trust me, I was reared in that stuff, right? But the basis of the book talks about how we need to come to understand, all of us, men and women, by the way, because femininity has to do with women, but the feminine has to do with men and women. But how I translate that into my work is that I say leadership is moving from masculine to feminine. It's moving from direction to influence. It's moving from competition to collaboration. And if you don't grasp these things in the world of AI, which will be entirely masculine, you will no longer be of value. So you can have an underlying, so all of my work actually is based on this concept of invoking the feminine. I don't always talk about it to leaders, but they understand that if they don't adapt, if they can't bend, then they're going to break, and that the world's about balance. So how do you bring that into what you talk about? So I have a fundamental spiritual and personal theme, which is my thing, but then I manifest that out through the work that I do in coaching and business leadership and business development and what have you. I haven't quite got into the personal development space yet, but we'll see what happens there. So it's okay to have a theme like trust or like whatever, which is really important to you, which is a core principle to who you are, which defines your values. But then you find ways to manifest that, to bring that to the world in the way in which the world finds that of value to their pain. If you can do that, you make a lot of money.
That's brilliant, Sean. As I may add, when I advise people to say, okay, stick with three topics or 3 niches, then they reply from, what if someone calls with a totally different topic?
But if, sorry, just in relation to that, better still to have 1 niche but 3 services.
Yes, yes.
You're adding more value into that 1 niche, yeah.
But that's all because of your focus, how you get out there. That doesn't mean that you can't pick up the phone and answer someone else's question about a related topic. So this is your personal focus on exactly your trust bank, that people quickly understand.
If somebody comes to me and goes, "Can you give us 30 minutes on networking for retailers?" Sure.
Exactly.
Because I've got networking, so I can do that, right? But I'm not going to go looking for retailers because that's not my marketplace. But if someone recommends me and a retailer calls me, I'll say, sure, what do you need? You know?
Exactly. Yeah.
But I'm not investing my social capital or my business capital into finding that market because it's not my niche.
Exactly. And then you muddy your communication efforts.
Yeah. I think one of the things as well, though, is you don't have to pick up every piece. Now, don't get me wrong. I know in the last 6-7 months, we pick up every piece of business, right? But you don't have to pick up every piece of business if you don't think it's right for you and it's not right for your brand. It's not right for what you do. So you do, you know, sometimes it's the business you turn down that was actually the better decision than the business you take. You just need to be clear about what it is you do. You know, I also think the other thing is, I think a lot of speakers, a lot of coaches, and a lot of people, they confuse themselves with their businesses. I run a business. It happens to be powered by my values and my beliefs and my philosophies, but it's a business. I don't get myself confused that if you don't buy my stuff, you're not buying me, and I should be suitably broken and rejected. I go, fine. Thanks for self-selecting out of my tribe, and I move on. Okay, and you know, a vast majority of speakers and coaches, they don't make a lot of money. I run a successful practice and make pretty good money out of what I do because I run it like a business. So I think fundamentally, you know, we started this conversation about going global and acting local. COVID is the best opportunity for us in the world. Why? Because people are now happy to pay for talking to somebody on the computer because they understand the value now. They weren't there 6 months ago. They are there now, and they will be there for the next 20 years. Okay? And this is an opportunity. You know, years ago, I had a fantastic mentor, a guy called Dr. Dennis Waitley. Dennis was a behavioral psychologist. He was the psychologist to the Apollo astronauts on the moon landings, the American Olympic team, the best speaker I have ever seen, ever, bar nobody. So if you can look him up on YouTube, check him out. He is amazing. But he said something's gone completely out of my head. Oh yeah, he talked about 20 years ago, he's ahead of everybody else. He talked about America. He was talking to American audiences. Greatest competition is an immigrant with a laptop. Because with a laptop, we don't have to be immigrants. I can sell into America. I don't need a green card because I'm not leaving the country. I'm not standing on their soil anymore. Markets that previously were shut down to me are no longer shut down to me. Just a question of how I go after it. We are immigrants with laptops. We are unstoppable.
Can you
market in the world's ours.
Can you repeat the name of this speaker?
Oh, Dr. Dennis Waitley, Waitley. Dr. Dennis Waitley. Absolute incredible man, incredible guy.
Okay, since we're a little bit on the time, we had mentioned in our schedule, I'd like to suggest a closing round. And thank you very much, Sean, for your very, very insightful full words. Maybe it's interesting to go around everyone, and I'm interested. The one thing that really stood out that you have learned today. Froa, can I start with you?
Yeah, a lot of things. Thank you, Sean, for your information and for talking that you had with us. And for me, it's I'm going to do the strategy sessions with another name, and I have to do that. So I will start that next week. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Froa. Anna, do you have what did you pick up in the short time you?
Yeah, in the short time, I love the idea starting with a question of consequence. I do that sometimes also with my students and in the workshops. Indeed, that when the question drops in your head and stays, I do agree, and. It's good that you reminded, and me personally, Sean, is that you have to run a business, right? Mm. Yeah, that is a thing with me. Like, all right, again, yes, exactly. You have to run a business, and then different laws apply. Right. Thank you.
Thanks, Anna. X-Team?
I think for me is Lundy also mentioned this past week in a PSA South Africa thing about the niching basically and the social capital. She just called it something different. And I think that is something that's really valuable. What I think is this whole thing is coming to be together for me in the last 2 weeks because I did a TED talk about 2 weeks ago, and it's not published yet, but I have a link that sort of temporary link that people can look at. And just sending that around to a few people has already gotten people to invite me just to come and talk to them about certain things. And it's given me an opening. And that has now led to 2 sessions for free for people to come and attend. And out of that, I've had about 8 hot leads, which is more than I've had in 3 months' time. And it's just, giving that little bit away for free, re-niching, resetting up your message. And I think, Sean, the one thing that I wrote down today, which is really important to me, is when we're in times of stress, all right, where all our executive functions, everything else is affected by that. So we're less capable of resisting stimuli, both positive and negative. And so that energy that we have is limited. So if we're working with people that are energy drainers, so those clients we really don't want to work with, okay, it's affecting our performance and it's affecting our ability to deliver. And I think that is the one thing I'm taking away here tonight is go focus on those people that give me energy or those people that I really enjoy working with. Because I've seen the last 2 weeks, it's made a huge difference for me. People have just sort of resonated with the stuff that I said because it's people that I like talking to.
Yeah, totally
It's
agree.
X-Team. Renske?
Well, because of the mastermind group that I'm in with Jan, I knew already a lot of stuff, but the reminders and how you brought it to this pace was, I'm writing it all down again for myself, and it's just super clear now. And I know every time I get reminded, I know how much work I still have to do for myself. But it's also what really got my attention was it really resonated so deeply is that you said the world is moving into this feminine kind of energy and leadership, from competition to collaboration. And I was wondering, because I relate that to the music industry as well. People, I'm not going to dive into that too deeply now because we're running out of time. But I didn't catch the part. Did you write something about that as well, or do you only implement it in your business? And because I would love to know more about this. And
I wrote a book called Invoking the Feminine.
Okay.
Strength, Love, and Wisdom. It's actually on Amazon at the ridiculously expensive price of €2.99. It's only a short little book, right? So that'll break the bank, I'm telling you. And it's actually the first of another book which will follow it afterwards. But the story, it's like a metaphor. So there's a father and a daughter. The mother dies, so the daughter loses her mother. Then her father takes her away, and he teaches her his understanding of the world, which includes visiting the 3 principal aspects of the divine feminine. And they all teach her different things, which are fundamentals to the movement to the feminine age. So I've been told it's a good book. Check it out.
Thank you so much. And again, the way that you brought it to... it's crystal clear again. So thank you so much.
Good.
Deborah.
The 2 things that I will really take from this is the phrase that you used, Sean, around imagine a world in which, and that has just got me spinning because my speech title is around real leadership in an unreal world. So I really need to paint a picture of what an unreal world looks like in which people are being unreal, and what an unreal world looks like in which people are being real. And I think I just need to explore that myself a lot more. So that's kind of set me on a path, which is great. And I'm also really excited by the idea that the the last thing you said there, that the immigrants with a laptop, that people are now recognizing the huge value of speakers in whatever form it takes, whether it's virtual or live. That's no longer the thing they think they're paying for. They know that they're paying for the value given by the person giving the talk. And that just suddenly you kind of go, there's no limit. There's no limit anywhere globally for that, if we can find the right message that connects and is of value to the right audience. But at least now people are willing to pay for that, because information, there's so much information, so there's such a premium on the right information that touches the right people.
I think something to consider around information is that it's no longer really about information, it's about interpretation that leads to transformation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's great.
Well, as said, thank you, Deborah. And as for myself, all of the above, as I might say, and especially as I'm the president of PSA Netherlands now, I'm constantly trying to see what the relevance is for speakers and speakers associations, and what you mentioned as last, that COVID has been good for speakers. I never imagined that we would get to this conclusion at our fourth speaker college of this year, and I think it's a brilliant, because it gives us a positive energy on a bad situation, and that's what always gets us forward. Positive energy gets us forward, gets you into momentum, and gets things going, instead of negative energy that gets you back and stopping at what you do. So it's very, very insightful, the full 90 minutes. And well, I think it's funny that we started with less people than we ended with. So that's very good. We still miss 5 people from South Africa. I don't know if that's also our planning. Still, thank you very much, Sean. Thank you very much, everyone else attending. We are organizing a mastermind, 45-minute mastermind, bi-weekly. It's free for everyone. And if you have a question about your business, about speaking or whatever, you can bring it in. And all the great minds that join in with the mastermind help you answering your questions. So I would invite all of you to join the mastermind bi-weekly. You can find it on our website, PSANL.com. So once again, Sean, thank you very much for today, and everybody else for attending.
Pleasure, guys. Have a good weekend. Be good. Take care.